What if I told you there's a place that claims more bodies than the Bermuda Triangle, but it's in the United States? It's called the Alaska Triangle, and it has a disappearance rate 16 times the national average. But we're not just talking about missing people. Ships, planes, and their entire crews appear on the radar one second and vanish into thin air the next. So what exactly is happening in Alaska, and what's the cause of these disappearances? It's time to decode the Alaska Triangle. I'm Brad Meltzer. I've spent my life collecting stories, signs, symbols, and codes hidden in plain sight. Some have become the basis for my novels, but I've only scratched the surface, and now history has given me the resources to investigate the rest. This is Decoded.
It's Brad.
Hey, Brad.
How's it going?
Okay, guys, I want you to be careful up there because every year thousands of people go up to Alaska, and unfortunately, many of them disappear off the face of the earth.
Really? What do you mean disappear, Brad?
I mean vanish, without a trace. I know that's the reason some people go to Alaska in the first place, but these numbers are too high to ignore. There are over 60,000 missing persons in Alaska since they started keeping track in 1988. Some people are talking about it as if it's a black hole. Some people refer to it as the Alaska Triangle. It's a triangle that extends from Juneau to Barrow to Anchorage.
Brad, is there any explanation for where these people are going or how they're disappearing?
That's what you need to find out.
So I guess if we don't come back, then it exists.
That's all the proof I need, buddy.
Oh, my word. Well, you want to talk about mysterious, you've got our interest here. This is mysterious.
Okay, Brad, we will get on this and we will get back to you.
Yeah, off to the Alaska Triangle.
Alaska officially became the 49th U.S. state on January 3rd, 1959. As the biggest state in the Union, it is 425 times bigger than Rhode Island and home to the coldest temperatures in the United States, regularly hitting 70 degrees below zero. Alaska, quite simply, doesn't work the way other states work. In northernmost Barrow, Alaska, when the sun rises on May 10th, it doesn't set again for 3 months. The residents there must enjoy it while they can, because when the sun sets on November 18th, it's dark until the middle of January. 50% of all U.S. earthquakes occur in Alaska at a rate of up to 100 a day. There are over 100 volcanoes in Alaska, and the one that creeps me out, the mosquitoes there can grow to be as big as hummingbirds. But the biggest thing in Alaska is its disappearance rate. Every year, 4 out of 1,000 Alaskans will simply vanish. That may not sound shocking, but the next time you go to a crowded mall, look around and imagine every person in the mall disappearing, never to be heard from again.
The state has a rich history, going back to the coal mine days. Second World War, we've had planes that crashed that were being ferried to Russia. There was a guy who was a famous Alaska climber, walked away there and never came back. Baggage and Boggs disappeared in a plane crash. It just kind of goes on and on and on.
These politicians, Baggage and Boggs, what do you know about what happened to them?
They were in a plane that was last flying across Prince William Sound, and they've never found wreckage. They've never found anything.
It seems strange to me that a plane could disappear. I mean, you would think that somebody as well known as 2 congressmen...
Oh, they looked and they looked and they looked. I mean, they put a lot of effort into trying to find some sign of that plane, and they never found anything.
One of the most famous disappearances in Alaska happened in 1972 when 2 congressmen aboard a 4-passenger plane bound from Anchorage to the state capital Juneau disappeared without a trace. One of the men, Representative Hale Boggs, a Democrat from Louisiana, was the House Majority Leader, which made him one of the most influential men in American politics. The other missing man, Nick Begich, was a Democrat from Alaska. No trace of either man nor the plane they were in was ever found.
two well-known congressmen just vanish off the face of the earth. I mean, that's a pretty unusual occurrence.
That's a pretty unusual occurrence, but here less so than anywhere because, I mean, we have a fair number of aircraft that go down that do disappear. I had a friend who was a biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. It was the same way. Plane disappeared and it's never been found.
The plane or the people have never been found.
None of them have ever been found. But we had a similar one where a National Park Service crew last summer, and they disappeared. They never found bodies or anything else. We spent weeks and weeks searching for a couple of women who disappeared here a couple of years ago.
Climbers?
Never found them.
It may sound like the people who are going missing are exactly who you would expect, outdoorsmen. But the other side of that is that these are experienced people who know how to handle themselves in unforgiving Alaska. And despite their expertise, thousands have just disappeared. As a journalist, Craig Medred has been reporting on the outdoor adventure community for decades. And if he's telling us that the state's most experienced hunters, fishermen, climbers, and pilots are the ones going missing, then we definitely need to look deeper.
So how do you deal with that?
It's kind of Alaska. You move on, you inevitably know people who end up dead.
Dying, I understand. Disappearing, I don't.
The disappearance thing is the most troubling. It's a really hard thing to get your hands around that someone's disappeared.
There are many theories about what could be happening in the Alaska Triangle, ranging from the paranormal to hard science. Geologists suggest that those who disappear at sea may be the victims of fire ice, deposits of methane come into Alaska that bubble beneath the surface of the ocean. The methane decreases the buoyancy of water, causing ships or fallen planes to suddenly sink. Some Alaskans swear that people disappear off the face of the earth because they're taken to another world or abducted by UFOs. And others say that energy anomalies and vortexes cause wormholes, a tear in the fabric of space that transports people to another time and place, and also the single most overused plot device in Star Trek. These theories may seem out there, but with a disappearance rate 1,500% higher than average, no theory can be overlooked.
It sounds like you're talking about prominent people have gone missing, skiers, people in airplanes. It sounds almost like you're talking about a sort of Alaskan triangle where people go in and they just vanish.
Alaska really doesn't care who you are. I mean, it doesn't care, what your title is or how much money you have or any of that. It's an equal opportunity killer.
We've heard that two prominent congressmen and their plane disappeared in Alaska in the 1970s. So what does that mean? It means that the U.S. government was involved and that they collected intelligence about what could have happened to that plane. And that means Buddy, Mac, and Scott now have a lead to follow.
Where did your father board the airplane and where were they heading?
The flight was to leave Anchorage to fly to Juneau. Basically, small plane, 4 passengers, the pilot, one of my father's aides, and then Hale Boggs and my dad. The plane disappeared on October 16, 1972, and at that time it was the largest air and sea search in the history of the world, actually. I mean, it was huge. It involved over 400 private fishing vessels, hundreds of private planes, 12 Coast Guard cutters. The SR-71, I believe, was a spy plane used. So, I mean, really, really the top of the line. And actually, I was approached by a couple of generals in the Pentagon that told me what they were using. And it was absolutely, I mean, the most classified, but they said it would pick up a dime from 30,000 feet.
The SR-71, or Blackbird, was developed for purposes of national security. But when one of the most important men in Congress went missing, it got the call. The Blackbird was equipped with infrared cameras to pick up heat signatures. But even with all this technology, not even a trace of the plane they were flying was ever found.
Well, what did they find?
Nothing. Never found a thing.
And are you satisfied now that you know what happened to him?
No. Either the military is lying and they found the aircraft and never disclosed it, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, or it disappeared. Because the technology they had should have given us the answer. Should have given us the answer.
Just so we get this straight, within hours of taking off, this plane effectively vanished into thin air.
That's right.
We've been looking at something called the Alaska Triangle.
Right.
Have you heard of that?
Absolutely. And this comes up because of the disappearances, not just planes, but ships and boats and people.
So it's not inconceivable to you that there's an actual Alaska Triangle that's like the Bermuda Triangle?
Very likely could be.
The Bermuda Triangle stretches from Bermuda to Florida to Puerto Rico, and it's famous for its unexplained disappearances of planes, ships, and people. No one is sure what causes the disappearances or where they go, but the Bermuda Triangle has claimed over 150 vessels in the past century alone. One of its most high-profile disappearances is that of Naval Flight 19. On December 5th, 1945, 5 torpedo bombers set off on a routine mission from Fort Lauderdale. None of them would ever return. Only one radio message made it back to the base, from a pilot detailing how his instruments were failing and the navigational equipment was going haywire. Moments later, communication systems failed too. The 5 planes seemed to vanish into thin air, and neither the planes nor the pilots were ever found.
So you do think there's something more?
Well, the idea of energy vortexes within the world have been analyzed by people. The Russians did some great work on this. This type of energy anomaly can interfere with compasses, flight avionics. It interferes with wireless communications, satellites, even ground power grids can be interfered with.
A vortex, by definition, is a swirling mass of air or water, but it can also be a mass of energy. Many scientists believe that much like static electricity is present in a thunderstorm, certain regions of the Earth possess an electrostatic signature, which creates a vortex. And yes, I know this is not science fiction. Scientists still don't fully understand exactly how vortexes work or why people and machines are affected and disrupted by their energies.
Research in the area of energy anomalies is pretty interesting. We don't hear much of it in the U.S., but I work with a lot of scientists around the world in the rest of my life. And so this is an issue that does come up, and it is something that bears some looking into.
Nick Begich Jr.'s father disappeared when he was only 13, and he spent his life trying to understand what happened to his dad. After consulting with search and rescue and military leaders and studying the official reports, he concluded the only plausible explanation for his dad's disappearance is that it defied explanation. Nick is the son of a congressman. He wants an answer more than anything about what happened to his father. After exploring every possibility, he's still coming up empty. So you better believe I want to know what's really going on.
It sounds like what you're saying is that it's possible that an airplane could go into this thing called the Alaska Triangle and be affected by the vortex.
Yes. I think there's the possibility of several explanations for this, and none of them line up with the official record at all, period.
Buddy, Mac, and Scott are in Alaska, looking for a reason behind the multitude of people who go missing there every year. They've just learned about the notorious case of Congressman Begich and Boggs, whose plane disappeared without a trace in between Anchorage and Juneau back in 1972. So if there is some sort of energy vortex or magnetic anomaly that's causing planes to drop off the face of the Earth in Alaska, we need to know about it. Now Buddy and McKinley are insisting on getting as close to the eye of the storm as they possibly can. And the pilot they found was a member of the Begich-Boggs search party.
Terry, we're wondering if we can get up into the area of Portage Lake, around where Begich Boggs disappeared.
So they were coming from there down, right?
Right, they were going to Juneau.
Okay.
So Anchorage is here. We go down through Turnagain Arm here. We can get into Prince William Sound. We'll go up through the fjord here and come around this way.
Okay, so like there, Whittier and oh man.
We're here now. So we're going to go fly around in the area where our plane disappeared.
That's it.
Let's take a second to review what Buddy and Mac are doing. They've pinpointed the spot on the map where the highest number of planes go missing, and they're paying someone to fly them to it. This is why I love these guys.
a lot of planes and people that have gone missing?
Oh yeah, over the years, yes. Probably, there's been several real famous people that have disappeared.
I mean, like Baggage and Boggs?
Like Baggage and Boggs, yeah.
So were they flying this route?
They were heading towards Juneau. Nobody figures they made it much past Whittier. Portage right through there.
And you were up in the air that day?
I was up in the air that day. And then the following day, I got the trooper on board and we went on the search.
You were on the search.
Yes. Oh yeah, very definitely.
Wow. And how would you compare the weather then to the weather today?
Oh, this is beautiful.
Okay.
It was really raining hard. It's low elevations and it was snowing up. But there had to be really good icing conditions.
Well, clearly you've iced up, right?
Oh yeah. The problem is with ice is when you go into it, if you don't turn around soon enough, if you fly too far before you decide to turn around, then you're going back through it again. So you just double the load of ice. It builds up.
Icing in an aviation context is exactly what it sounds like, when the conditions are wet enough and cold enough for ice to form on the wing. It's these conditions that make Alaska one of the most dangerous places to fly on Earth.
What's that?
What kind of turbulence makes you uncomfortable?
That makes me uncomfortable.
Freaking me out a little bit.
We might get some more bumps here. I can see the wind start blowing. It's blowing over here on the water a little bit.
What?
It's blowing on it from my nose going this way. You can see the streaks on the water.
Right. Okay. Terry, is that we're heading into what looks like a lot of white, literally a wall of white clouds.
Can you go up there just a little bit closer and take a look here and see if we can see through here?
Do we need to take a look?
Terry, right now I'm noticing that your compass is getting a little bit weird. I don't know, he said it's off and it's behaving pretty weird and... Okay.
I've never seen a compass that just acted this weird.
You gotta love Terry. He is what we call a cool customer. So he's not gonna let on just how dangerous it can get up there. But when a pilot loses visibility and his instruments, that's when bad things happen. And now you're starting to see how a plane and everyone in it could simply vanish. But right now, Scott is about to learn some things that Buddy and McKinley are gonna wish they knew before they got up in the air.
In your many years as a state trooper and as a pilot, have you ever experienced anything while in an airplane that made you think twice?
Well, yes, the farther you get north in North America, the closer to the magnetic pole, the more deviation there is on the compass. And it's about 30% in Alaska. Professional bush pilots have to have experience and you have to have training over a long period of time. You just don't become a bush pilot. It takes years. But the good ones really know what they're doing.
Was the Baggage and Boggs pilot a bush pilot?
The pilot, Don Johns, happened to be a friend of mine. And when I learned to fly, he was my check pilot. So I knew him pretty well. He was a very experienced pilot.
Take me back to 1972. Two very high-profile people take off from Anchorage heading to Juneau, and all of a sudden,
gone.
They drop off the face of the
Exactly.
earth. Doesn't it seem completely unusual to you that they found absolutely nothing?
Yes, it does, and it's been a puzzle ever since. A lot of us have felt that way, but that's what happened. It just disappeared.
What do you think happened to this airplane?
There's no way of knowing. It's all speculation because there's absolutely no evidence of what happened.
Do you think at this late stage there's any possibility of finding this airplane?
I doubt that it'll ever be found. Ironically, the month before the crash or the disappearance, he wrote an article for Flying Magazine on icing.
The conventional wisdom states that the Baggage Boggs plane went down as a result of icing. But Johns was a veritable expert on maneuvering planes through the Alaskan wilderness, and his article detailed new ways for pilots to safely overcome such problems. So that doesn't mean it could have happened to Johns, but it does make the likelihood that he would knowingly fly into icing conditions seem far less likely. This was not the type of man to make rash decisions in the air, which tells me that there's something else going on here that the conventional wisdom can't explain.
The thing that the Baggage Boggs case brought out was the magnitude of it. It's not that uncommon for planes to be missing, but it's, I would say, almost a routine situation to have a plane disappear.
We've also been looking into magnetic anomalies, which seem to be pretty prevalent here in Alaska. Do you think that might have had anything to do with this disappearance?
It's possible. I mean, as I said before, I mean, there is absolutely zero evidence of what happened. So your imagination can kind of be your guide on what happened.
We're going to have to turn around here. This is getting too dark.
Do you want to go back?
Yeah, I wanted to go back a while ago, so.
Oh my God. I mean, it looks like you would be completely engulfed in there.
Yeah, that water is looking like Titanic cold.
Oh. What I can see is that things close out almost instantaneously. I mean,
they close down real fast. We need to see where we're going to get back, so we'll turn around here and wait for another day.
McKinley grew up in Alaska. To those of us in the lower 48, Alaska is the last frontier, full of vistas and glaciers, pristine mountains, and wildlife. But it's also a rough, rugged hinterland, where everything is bigger, including the threats to human survival. Buddy, Mac, and Scott are investigating the possibility that Alaska is more than just unspoiled wilderness and far too much snow, that there are actually phenomena claiming human lives that our current scientific understanding is absolutely unable to explain.
I love bush planes. I like being up there, but every time I'm back with my feet on solid ground, I feel a lot better. When we were up in that plane, the compass went wonky.
I was more than happy to let you guys handle that one, but it did seem like something was, you seemed a little freaked out when you got back, both of you.
I don't like it when the pilot gets very serious and quiet. He kind of just shut down, which means that he's concentrating on surviving.
Well, when the compass went crazy, did you guys feel anything strange? I mean, did you feel like the plane was out of control or that you were really in danger?
When I see a scientific instrument, an objective instrument, do something weird, that's when I trust that something weird has happened.
So what do you think it was? I mean, what could possibly make a compass do that?
It has to be magnetic. It's responding to a magnetic field. That's all a compass responds to.
Okay, well, check this out. This is a site of the U.S. Geological Survey, and it shows the magnetic anomalies in North America. And here, where we are, and where we flew,
oh, wow.
This is Alaska, and it is a magnetic anomaly hotspot. It's a fire zone right here. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. Holy cow.
This could be magnetized rock. It could be, I mean, anything that electric current can run through could create a magnetic field.
And what's scary is, like, we flew right there.
Yes,
It's like literally a fireball of magnetic anomaly.
Well, and our brains are electrical. Our nervous system is electrical. If it can affect instrumentation, it can affect the instrumentation of your body.
You know, that's a good point. And that way you get lost, or you can't find your way back, or you get disoriented.
Wait, check it out. There have been many reports of time and space dilations that were accompanied by loss of compass, altimeters, artificial horizon, loss of radio contact, and other strange phenomena. Devil's graveyards are triangular areas where physical anomalies have been reported, such as mysterious disappearances of ships and airplanes.
Okay, and they're in triangles.
Planes arrive after arrival time, and all the watches on board are late by exactly the same amount of time.
That's spooky as hell, actually.
Okay, check it out. 12 geographic areas, these are vortexes, alleged by a scientist to have been sites of mysterious disappearances. The 12 devil's graveyards around the world.
The Bermuda Triangle, Stonehenge, the ancient Egyptian pyramids, and the stone monuments on Easter Island all stand equidistant from each other, and each of them fits into the planetary grid of documented vortexes. All of these alleged devil's graveyards have been associated with unexplained phenomena dating back thousands of years.
Is Alaska one of them?
Oh, it is. Holy cow.
How does it feel that you just flew through a devil's graveyard and lived to tell it?
Oh my God, yeah.
Something weird is going on here.
I would like to talk to a vortex expert. Someone who really understands what a vortex is in the way that these guys are describing it.
What is a vortex exactly?
In general, a vortex is a spinning energy, like a hurricane.
What happens to people in the Alaska Triangle?
Well, I believe that we are susceptible to shifts in consciousness when we expose ourselves to these energies. You might possibly have hallucinations. You might have, lost time
hallucinations and lost time could get one lost or make them disappear.
Right, well, lost time could potentially be an effect of consciousness.
Do you think that the vortex is contributing to the people going missing in Alaska?
I believe that it's possible. I don't think you can explain all the missing people. They haven't all been eaten by bears.
How will we know when we're in a vortex?
Different people experience it different ways. Some people have psychic sight. They can see the lines of energy. I tend to feel a tingling in my face. When I come to effectively the boundary is where the energy tends to be strongest. You can think of like a spinning phonograph record and how fast it spins at the edges. There is a tool that you can use that may help you to identify the vortex. This device is called the Golden Vortex. One of the researchers in my vortex research group has discovered a certain arrangement of magnets. There are 3 magnets in here in a specific arrangement, and he claims that this is a portable vortex. One of the phenomena that you see at a vortex is that people will appear to change height. So if you have 2 participants on a perfectly level platform facing each other across the boundary of a vortex, you'll notice over time that there seems to be an apparent shift in the relative height of the 2 participants. We could do a little experiment here and see if the 2 of you experience any change in relative height.
Okay. I don't want to be her height. I'm happy.
How tall are you?
It's about 6 feet.
And how tall are you?
5'9".
Okay, well, I would suggest that you stand up on this nearly perfectly level platform here, a couple feet apart, and face each other. First, let me pull the vortex out of the equation, and we'll just we'll do the vortex salute, which is you kind of put your hand here at your eye level, and you look as straight across as you can, and you notice, okay, I'm looking at the bridge of the person's nose. Notice that place where you're looking at each other. And now I'm going to put this vortex device in between the 2 of you here, and we'll see.
You know, age is going to make me short enough. I don't necessarily need a golden vortex to help me along.
Are you noticing any difference?
You look taller.
Am I going to do it?
You look taller to me.
Yes. Are you serious? Grown? Yes. I thought I was going to get your height, but
No, I looked across and I was like,
actually,
before I was there,
that's true.
I feel shorter than you, way shorter than normal. It's really weird.
Kind of crazy, right? Believe me, this is not some trick of our cameras, but just wait, it gets better.
Now, what if, look at where the other person's standing and change places.
Switch with each
Switch
other?
places around the golden vortex.
Oh my, I'm towering over you now.
Yes.
Am I?
Yeah. You look
Yeah,
thinner, too.
Oh, good. That's good.
That happens, actually.
Is this an optical illusion?
I don't see how it can be an optical illusion in the ordinary way that we understand optical illusions. It may be purely visual phenomena, something like refraction, but it's also possible, I want you to consider the possibility that there's something physical going on.
I promise this is not a special effect. In fact, our camera operators couldn't believe their eyes, and our camera equipment was going crazy and inexplicably malfunctioning. Something about this tiny vortex made the person standing on one side seem stretched out and thin, and the person on the other side seem short and compacted. We know magnets can pull at and stretch matter. Is it possible a magnetic anomaly that we don't fully understand could pull and stretch light? Our cameras seem to think so. I personally have no idea. But if a vortex the size of a quarter can do this to our equipment and our own eyes, imagine what a vortex the size of the Alaska Triangle can actually do.
In Alaska, there's every characteristic that we would expect to find for vortexes. We find volcanoes, we find mountain peaks, we find glaciers, we find ore and mineral deposits, disappearances, extreme weather. We have the atmospheric electricity and the electrical currents in the earth. We find reports of cryptozoologic creatures. So there are any number of solid scientific reasons to expect that we're going to find some anomalous phenomena there.
Cryptozoological creatures are animals whose existence has not yet been documented. This is not something we're telling you to believe. This is one culture's theory. So Scott is talking to someone whose ancient Alaskan ancestors have a cryptozoological explanation for the thousands of people who have vanished here over the centuries.
I am Alaska Native. My Tlingit name is Dayush, and I belong to the Sun House. Ever since I've grown up, I've known people who have disappeared or went out boating or into the woods or the mountains and have never come home again. Our people, a lot of times, attribute it to evil beings that exist in this world with us, that it's basically their job to capture us, take us. And in southeastern Alaska, with the Tlingit people, it is usually attributed to the Kushtaka. In Tlingit, Kushtaka.
Throughout history, when a people couldn't explain something with science, they turned to myth. The Greeks couldn't explain that lightning was an electrostatic discharge, so they said it was the angry Zeus hurling his weapon from Mount Olympus. Alaskans couldn't explain the huge number of people disappearing every year, so the different tribes developed their own myths. To the north, the Alaskan Eskimos called it the Ur-A-Uli, or hairy man, or what we might think of as Bigfoot. To the south, the Alaskan Indians called it the Natina. But the Tlingit, who come from the center of the Alaskan Triangle, have the Kushtaka, the most deadly and terrifying of them all.
And so what exactly is a Kushtaka?
The Kushtaka is probably the most evil spirit in Tlingit culture. It is something that as children were taught about and extremely afraid of. His goal in this universe is to take your life, but to capture your soul, and take your soul so that it becomes his slave, a spirit slave in essence. You have no chance of a peaceful afterlife at that point. You are his slave.
Your elders have basically told you this as an explanation for some of your people that have gone missing?
You'll hear someone say, oh, Kushtaka got him. Such kind of a taboo subject that people just really prefer not to talk about it.
So Ethan, do you believe that people that you personally know that have gone missing without explanation were the victim of the Kushtaka?
I think that some of them probably were. His way to get you is not to just sneak up on you and attack you. The way he gets you is to attract you to him. He's, I guess, kind of a shapeshifter in a way, either changing his shape or making you think that you're seeing something different. So, as a kid, you know, you're outside playing, your grandmother's working in the smokehouse, and you're over here playing. Well, maybe over here, all of a sudden, you look up, and there's your grandmother, and you thought, well, I thought she was in the smokehouse, but now she's over here, and she's standing by the edge of the woods in the salmonberry bushes, and she'll be motioning to you to come to her. So she's going like this, not saying a word. And if you just follow her, she'll retreat back into the forest, and when you get into the forest, he's enticed you, he's tricked you to follow him. You're done. Making my hair stand up talking about it.
You know, you're making my hair stand up, too. I mean, it sounds to me, Ethan, like you absolutely believe that Kushtaka exists.
Even, I know grown men, even old men, who are extremely fearful of this being Kushtaka. In fact, many of us don't even like to say his name. When we heard that this concept was coming up, a lot of us here were like, don't want to talk about it.
Ethan wasn't kidding when he said that his people don't like to talk about the Kushtaka. The only reason he told us he was even willing to do it was because he felt it was important that we get the story straight. In fact, the Kushtaka is a being of such evil omen in the Tlingit culture that once we were through, Ethan had to have a shaman purify the air in the clan house where we shot the interview.
It just seems like almost everybody I'm meeting here in Alaska has a story of somebody going missing and never being heard from again. Now, one of the explanations that we've heard is these vortexes or magnetic anomalies. Do you think, in a sense, the Kushtaka is the explanation for a vortex? I mean, people have gone missing without explanation, and you got an explanation.
What we have are stories that are thousands of years old in regards to these evil demons or these spirits that, such as Kushtaka. Then these other stories come like vortexes and things like that. And I don't know, maybe those are true. I've just not heard about them in our cultures. Mm-hmm. Those of us growing up here, we're pretty wedded to the concept that something's main mission is to destroy our souls, to capture our souls and keep them for themselves forever.
In 1778, while the War of Independence was being waged on America's East Coast, a captain in the Royal Navy named James Cook was boldly charting the west coast of Alaska. This man had sailed all around the world and was the first European to land on the east coast of Australia and circumnavigate New Zealand. But he met his match in the icy north. Several times he attempted the Northwest Passage, trying to sail through the Bering Strait, but foul weather and unfriendly seas caused him to turn back again and again. It was reported that during this time, the captain began behaving strangely, suffering from an unknown ailment and forcing his crew to eat walrus meat against their wishes. Could it be that Captain Cook, who is now known as an international hero, was one of the first white men to experience the disorienting effects of the vortex? Buddy, Mac, and Scott are in Alaska trying to find out more.
We talked to a lot of the local folks around here, and they tell us that there's a number of people that go missing, and you are never able to find them or rescue them or even find a body. Does that seem to be common?
It happens with a lot more frequency here in Alaska than I think in some other places because of the factor, the challenges we have here in Alaska. I think I've gotten used to the idea that people go missing because it's Alaska, but in any other part of the world, I think, or the United States, if that happened at the same rate that it happens here, it would be strange.
Bill Romberg is a modest guy, but what he's not telling you is that as one of the premier search and rescue specialists in Alaska, he's trained to pull off the types of rescues that are so complex and dangerous that Hollywood would need an entire special effects studio to pull them off in a movie. Jumping out of helicopters and being lowered down by the ankles into crevices of ice to retrieve people who have minutes left to live. Risking avalanches and plunging ahead into whiteout conditions. This is all in a day's work. If there is a vortex, chances are this guy has gone on belay into the mouth of it and been hoisted back out to tell the story.
This Alaskan triangle where most of the disappearances occur has been shown to us to go from Barrow to Anchorage to Juneau. Why do you think the disappearances are happening there?
That's where most of the people and where most of the activity is in terms of those sheer numbers.
Is it fair to say, Bill, that in Alaska, the minute you leave your area and head out into the mountains or the woods, you may not be coming back?
Alaska is one of the most difficult places to survive once you're away from all the comforts of home, in the city.
Have there been any rescue situations that you haven't figured out and that you still ponder over, that you can't, that they sort of keep you up at night?
Yeah, I think you could say that every mission that we have where we haven't been able to find the person who we went after, we were asked to go after, there's always that question in the back of your mind. Typically, if you were personally involved in the mission, it's always kind of in the back of your mind. We had one up in Denali National Park about 6 years ago that I was involved in. We spent a week looking for an individual, and we never found a clue that we knew was attached to that person, and we never found that person, and we never will.
Have you ever seen anything strange that you couldn't explain?
When I was early in my years in Alaska, when I was climbing mountains, I had heard of the magnetic anomalies or vortex, but what happens is you hear this buzzing sound, like just hundreds and hundreds of bees, and that happened to me on a couple of occasions. You could feel it. Ice axe was vibrating, and the air would become charged with electricity. And you don't see lightning per se, you don't hear thunder, but it was quite strange.
That would be absolutely freaky.
We kind of went, this is weird, and we figured it out after a little while that it had to be electricity, but it's truly a land of extremes in a number of ways.
We've been investigating the huge number of disappearances that occur in Alaska every year. The crazy thing is, we haven't even touched on all the deaths that occur where the victims are actually found. For every Hale Boggs and Nick Begich disappearance, there's a Senator Ted Stevens, whose plane went down in the Alaska wilderness and was recovered. There's no question that Alaska is a marvelous and treacherous place. The question is there something more going on there? Something that hasn't yet been adequately explained by modern science? Buddy, Mac, and Scott have their own conclusions.
This has been a great trip, huh, you guys?
We came to Alaska, we touched the void, and we survived.
It's been really incredible.
You know, I think we've had a lot of evidence to look at in this case. I mean, we looked into the disappearance of 2 prominent congressmen back in 1972, dropped off the face of the earth. I talked to a native Alaskan who basically said that he knows people that have disappeared, and it's his belief that there's a supernatural power that took those people from his tribe.
You know, I have to say, growing up here, we heard of the Bermuda Triangle. We'd never heard of Alaskan Triangle, of any of this sort of black hole or vortex kind of stuff. We did know about bears, about drowning, about mud flats, all those things that can get you.
To me, what happens in Alaska is that it hauls you in, because the kind of people who come here are the sorts of people who want to push it to the outer edges, who want to have a risk. Thrill seekers, adventurers, hunters, fishermen, all the people who like to do the most dangerous jobs in the world.
You know, you make a really good point, because we look at it as a vortex. The native Alaskans look at it as some sort of supernatural creature, the Kushtaka, who lures people into the woods and lets them disappear. And I wish you guys could have heard the story about that, because it literally sent chills up my spine. But what really grabs me about that is that they needed an explanation for what's going on, because that many of their people were disappearing in Alaska. And the Kushtaka takes your soul and keeps it for all eternity. In a sense, there's no closure there, and for people who've had missing persons in their families, this is really important.
So I guess we have to bottom line this. Is there an Alaskan Triangle? Is there a place here where phenomena are unexplained?
I think it's absolutely clear that there are unexplained phenomenon here. I think we saw it all across the board. We heard stories from people about feelings of electricity in their body and things like that. There may be an ultimate scientific explanation for it, but right now it's unexplained phenomenon, lots of it.
But I have to admit that coming back here, there's something about the smell of Alaska and the feel of Alaska. I can't explain that, I don't understand, and now I'm having a hard time leaving.
Is there an Alaskan Triangle that's, you know, stuck into the state that, like, has borders, and then when you enter it, it's over for you? I don't think so. But there are unexplained phenomena. The Begich Bog situation is one of them. We have theories about what happened to them, but we don't really know. This plane flew over the Whittier Pass, and within minutes has never been seen again on the face of this earth. And to me, I want an explanation for that. Will I ever have one? I'm not sure. Is there a probable explanation? The plane probably got icing on its wings and went down in Prince William Sound. But because we don't know that, people are going to keep coming to Alaska to get on those very edges, near those vortexes, near those anomalies, to try to see what it feels like. I think there's an energy in Alaska that's different. Every time I've been here, there's been an adrenaline charge, a kind of psychic charge that I've never had anywhere else.
I think you're right.
Native Alaskan tribes use the legend of the Kushtaka to explain what their science could not. But when we try to dismiss the Alaska Triangle as simply bad weather or dangerous terrain, we're doing the same thing ourselves. Alaska is a place where when the sun comes up, it doesn't go down for 3 months. Its magnetism, energy, and vortexes are unlike those of any place on Earth. So isn't it possible that there are conditions in Alaska that we don't yet comprehend which could be responsible for these disappearances? It may have eluded our understanding for thousands of years, but someday science will explain it. Don't forget, magic is simply what science can't explain, yet. So the Alaska Triangle shouldn't be looked at as a danger zone, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to explore one of the Earth's last uncharted frontiers, and to discover something brand new. And to me, this is what this show, Decoded, is all about. We see, we explore, and most important, we show these stories directly to you. Not to scare you, but so that we can find the truth together.